Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in every life when the weight becomes too heavy, the path becomes too dim, and the answers seem too far away. But hear me now. When your strength ends, God's strength begins. When your plans fall apart, God's purpose rises. Trusting God is not an act of weakness, it is the greatest declaration of courage. For the one who shaped the mountains, calms the oceans, and breathes life into dust, that same God is ready to take care of you. All you must do is trust Him. Trust begins where your control ends. It is easy to speak of trust when life is gentle, when the road is smooth, when what you desire falls effortlessly into your hands. But real trust, the kind that shakes your soul awake, begins at the boundary of your human ability. It begins the moment you realize that no matter how hard you push, no matter how long you plan, there will always come a space where your strength cannot cross. In that space, faith is born. In that space, you discover who you truly are and who God has always been. Trust is not passive. It is not silence nor surrender to fear. Trust is an active, sacred decision to place your trembling hands into the hands of the Almighty and say, "Lead me when I cannot see." When you reach the edge of yourself, you step into the beginning of God's guidance, and only then do you understand how deeply He has been directing your path long before you asked. People often strive to hold everything together, their families, their finances, their emotions, their dreams. They cling tightly, thinking that loosening their grip means losing control. But the truth is that human control is an illusion. The more you try to manage every detail, the more fragile you become, because life cannot be contained by your hands alone. There will be seasons when the unexpected enters like a storm, uninvited, unapologetic, unrestrained. You will face moments when your plans fall apart, when doors close as if slammed by an invisible force, when people you depended on walk away without explanation. In those moments, control slips through your fingers and you feel the ground beneath you shifting. But understand this: what feels like collapse to you is often construction to God. He is dismantling what was never meant to support your destiny and rebuilding something stronger in its place. Trust is choosing not to panic in the pause between demolition and creation. You may look around and wonder why the path isn't clear, why answers aren't coming, why progress is slow. But trust begins where clarity ends. When you cannot see the next step, but your heart whispers that God is near, that is trust. When you cannot trace His hand but still believe in His heart, that is trust. Control demands explanation. Trust requires surrender. Control seeks guarantees. Trust embraces mystery. Control fears the unknown. Trust walks into it with courage. And why? Because trust knows that God has already gone before you. Trust knows that He has stood in your future, prepared your way, shaped your blessings, and fought your battles long before you face them. Trust is not blindness. It is divine awareness, the kind that sees beyond circumstances and recognizes that God never leaves His beloved wandering without purpose. At times, you will feel as though everything in your life is being stretched. The challenges increase, the responsibilities grow, and the answers seem farther away. This stretching is not punishment, it is preparation. God stretches what He intends to strengthen. He stretches your faith so it can hold the weight of the destiny He is building. He stretches your patience so it can carry you through seasons that require endurance. He stretches your perspective so that you can see beyond temporary discomfort and into eternal purpose. But you cannot experience the fullness of this growth if you insist on controlling every outcome. Trust asks you to open your hands, release your fear, and allow God to finish the work He started in you. Your mind will sometimes argue, insisting that you must figure out everything on your own. It will whisper that trusting God is risky, that surrender will leave you vulnerable, that letting go means losing everything you worked for. But the mind can only see what is visible, while God works in the invisible. The mind sees obstacles, but God sees openings. The mind sees limits, but God sees destiny. The mind sees endings, but God sees transformations. And when your thoughts become overwhelmed with worry, when your heart becomes heavy with anxiety, that is the very moment trust begins to speak. Trust says, this is not the end, this is a transition. Trust says, if God brought me this far, he will not abandon me now. Trust says, I do not need to understand the plan to believe in the planner. Every great transformation in your life will require you to release something. Sometimes a habit, sometimes a fear, sometimes a relationship, sometimes an outdated version of yourself that cannot travel with you into your future. Release is uncomfortable, but it is also sacred. When you release what you cannot control, you create space for what God wants to place in your hands. He cannot fill hands that cling to the wrong things. He cannot stretch a heart that is locked in fear. He cannot elevate a soul anchored in old battles. Trust means loosening your grip on what is hurting you so God can place something healing in its place. There is beauty in the moment you stop striving to hold everything together. There is peace in realizing that you do not need all the answers to move forward. There is strength in choosing to trust when doubt tries to convince you otherwise. Trust does not erase your challenges, but it changes the way you face them. When you trust God, you stand differently. You breathe differently. You carry yourself with quiet confidence because you know that no matter what comes, you are held, guided, and protected by a power greater than anything you face. Trust reminds you that God has never failed you, not once, and he will not start failing you now. Trust begins where your control ends, because it is in that place of surrender that you finally experience the fullness of God's care. When your plans break, his purpose rises. When your strength fades, his power ignites. When your understanding collapses, his wisdom shines. And when you step out of your own way, you make room for God to move in ways that surpass anything you could have designed for yourself. God's timing is protection, not delay. So often, people believe that when something doesn't happen quickly, it means God has forgotten them, ignored their prayers, or withheld a blessing for reasons they cannot understand. But delay in the hands of God is never denial. It is shaping, safeguarding, refining, and preparing you for something that requires more strength, wisdom, and maturity than you possess in the present moment. When God waits, it is because he sees every dimension of your life. Your past that tried to break you, your present that is stretching you, and your future that requires a version of you that has yet to fully form. What you interpret as a pause is often God sheltering you from what is not yet ready for you, or what you are not yet ready to carry. His timing wraps itself around you like armor, shielding you from battles you were never meant to fight, and from paths that would have drained the very life from your spirit. It is protection in its most divine form, silent but strong, unseen yet deeply intentional. There are moments when you pray for something with all your heart, believing you are ready for it, convinced that your desire aligns perfectly with your destiny. Yet the heavens remain still, the door does not open. The opportunity passes by, the person steps away, the situation remains unchanged. In those moments, pain begins to blur your perspective. You may wonder why you must wait when others seem to receive quickly, why your journey feels longer, why your blessings approach slowly. But God's timing is not based on your impatience, it is based on his wisdom. You see a single thread, but he sees the entire tapestry. You see one chapter, but he is writing the entire book. He knows the storms that lie ahead, the challenges that could crush you, the hidden traps you cannot perceive, and he orchestrates the timing of your life not to punish you, but to protect you from what might shatter your spirit before you are strong enough to withstand it. Sometimes, if God gave you what you asked for too early, it would become a burden instead of a blessing. You may not yet have the emotional discipline to handle success, the spiritual grounding to survive pressure, or the clarity to distinguish between what is beneficial and what is destructive. You might attach yourself to people who would misuse your gifts, misuse your trust, or dim your light. You might step into opportunities that appear beautiful on the outside but are poison on the inside. God's timing protects you from counterfeit blessings, those glittering distractions sent to detour you from your true purpose. What feels like delay is often God's way of saying, not this, not now. I have better. I have safer. I have something more aligned with the soul I am shaping in you. There are blessings that require a season of preparation so that when they arrive, they do not overwhelm you, but uplift you. Waiting is uncomfortable because it confronts your desire for control. It pushes you to face your vulnerabilities, your fears, your doubts, your impatience. It forces you to pause and trust something beyond your own understanding. In the waiting, God is doing more than delaying an answer. He is strengthening you, deepening your character, refining your heart. He is pulling out the roots of insecurity, teaching you to stand steady in faith, and empowering you to walk confidently even when you cannot see the outcome. You may not notice the transformation while it is happening, but you will recognize it the moment you step into the blessing and realize that you are stronger, wiser, calmer, and more grateful than you ever would have been without the waiting. That is protection. That is timing perfected by a God who refuses to give you anything prematurely, because premature blessings create permanent damage. Think of all the times in your life when you wanted something desperately, only to realize later how dangerous it would have been for you. Perhaps a relationship you thought was meant to last forever. Yet if it had continued, it would have drained your self-worth. Perhaps a job you believed was ideal, yet it would have suffocated your potential. Perhaps a move you wanted to make, yet the environment would have pulled you away from your spiritual center. You look back now and see how God's delay became your deliverance. The closed doors that hurt you ended up saving you from a future that would have buried your spirit. The opportunities that slipped away were replaced by something far greater than what you originally imagined. What confused you in the moment became clarity in hindsight. This is how God works. Quietly but purposefully, gently removing what is not good for you and guiding you toward what will help you rise. God's timing also protects you from yourself, from the version of you that moves impulsively, that makes decisions based on emotion rather than wisdom, that reacts instead of reflects, that chooses comfort over growth. He delays certain things until your soul is ready to receive them with gratitude rather than desperation, until your heart is healed enough to love without fear, until your mind is clear enough to make decisions rooted in faith instead of anxiety, until your confidence is strong enough to stand firm even when challenges arise. Growth takes time, and God uses time as a tool, shaping you into the person who can hold the blessings He is preparing. If you are in a season where everything feels slow, remember that God is not holding your blessing hostage. He is holding it safe. People around you may move ahead. They may marry sooner, succeed sooner, get opportunities sooner. But comparison blinds you to the personalized nature of God's timing. Your journey is not late, it is exact. Your blessings are not missing, they are maturing. Your breakthrough is not lost, it is aligning. Just as fruit develops in seasons, so do you. If you pluck fruit too early, it is bitter. If you wait for the right moment, it is sweet, nourishing, and complete. God is ensuring that your blessings arrive fully ripe, not half-formed. What He has prepared for you requires the right alignment of people, places, circumstances, and your own readiness. If even one element is out of place, the blessing will not flourish. So He waits, not to withhold, but to synchronize every detail. Sometimes the delay is protection because God is still removing what cannot accompany you into the next chapter. People may drift away unexpectedly. Relationships may crumble. Friendships may fade. Habits may fall apart. Environments may shift. These losses feel painful, confusing, or unfair. But God removes what is misaligned so that your blessing does not have to compete with what will eventually destroy it. The pruning may hurt, but it is necessary. A tree that is not pruned cannot bear healthy fruit. Likewise, a heart that holds on to what is toxic cannot fully receive what is divine. God uses timing to cleanse your path, ensuring that nothing and no one sabotages the blessing He is preparing. Even the loneliness that comes with waiting can be protection. It keeps you from attaching yourself to the wrong people simply because you fear being alone. God's timing protects you from the enemy's traps, the ones designed to distract you, discourage you, or detour you from your destiny. Sometimes He slows your steps to keep you from walking into danger. Sometimes He delays your progress to prevent you from trusting the wrong voices. Sometimes He pauses your journey so you can hear His whispers more clearly. The path He builds may feel slow, but it is safeguarded. What the enemy intends to derail you cannot succeed because God is regulating the timing of your life like a shield, like a fortress, like a hand stretched over you. You may not see the battles He is fighting for you, but you are protected by them. And while you wait, God is positioning the right people, the mentors, the helpers, the encouragers, the destiny partners. He is orchestrating conversations you haven't heard yet, opening doors you haven't seen yet, preparing blessings that are quietly moving toward you. You think nothing is happening because you cannot see movement, but God often works in silence. Seeds grow underground long before they break through the soil. Just because you cannot see progress does not mean God is not producing it. Your blessing may be underground, but it is growing, forming, strengthening, and moving toward its appointed time. In this divine process, patience is not weakness. Patience is wisdom. Patience is spiritual intelligence. Patience is understanding that what is meant for you is never out of reach. It is simply placed in the future so that you can grow into the version of yourself that can sustain it. God's timing is flawless, not because it aligns with your desires, but because it aligns with His knowledge of your entire destiny. What He delays now, He will deliver later when it can bless you rather than break you. What you release to God, He restores with purpose. There comes a point in every life when holding on becomes heavier than letting go, when your grip around something, an expectation, a dream, a relationship, a fear begins to drain you instead of strengthen you. Human beings cling tightly to what is familiar, even when it hurts them. Even when it limits them, even when it blocks what could become a blessing. The heart does not easily release what it has invested in, and the mind does not easily release what it has imagined. Yet there is a sacred truth woven into the journey of faith. What you surrender to God does not disappear, does not diminish, does not die without meaning. It transforms, it returns, it gains depth, clarity, and purpose, because once it leaves your hands, it enters His. Letting go is not loss. It is the beginning of divine restoration, the kind that builds rather than breaks, elevates rather than empties, strengthens rather than shatters. People often believe that releasing something means giving up on it, abandoning hope, losing something treasured. But the act of releasing is not surrendering to despair. It is surrendering to alignment. When you release something to God, you are saying, I trust your vision more than my own attachment. I trust your wisdom more than my plans. I trust your purpose more than my understanding. This kind of surrender is not weakness, it is spiritual courage. It is the recognition that your hands, though capable, are limited, but God's hands carry infinite possibility. When you choose to let go, you are not walking away from your life. You are inviting God to lead it in ways you cannot yet see. There are seasons when God will ask you to loosen your grip on things you thought were essential. It may be a relationship that drains you more than it nourishes you, yet you cling to the history, the memories, the hope that someday it will change. It may be a dream that once inspired you but now exhausts you, a dream you shaped with your own strength instead of submitting to divine timing. It may be the fear that has clung to your spirit so long it feels like part of your identity. It may be the pain you keep revisiting, the regret you keep rehearsing, the past you keep resurrecting. And God whispers, release it. Let it go. Place it in my hands so I can return it healed, reshaped, or replaced with something greater. Releasing does not mean forgetting. It means freeing your soul from carrying what it was never designed to hold alone. Healing begins the moment you loosen your grip on what is hurting you. Restoration begins the moment you trust that God can do more with your surrender than you can do with your control. When you release bitterness, God restores peace. When you release fear, God restores courage. When you release heartbreak, God restores wholeness. When you release impatience, God restores clarity. When you release your limited vision, God restores direction. Every release creates space, and every space becomes a doorway through which God can pour something woven with purpose. Sometimes the hardest things to release are the unanswered questions. Why did this end? Why didn't it work? Why did they leave? Why did the opportunity collapse? Why did the prayer take so long? The mind craves explanation, but the spirit grows through surrender. There are answers that God protects you from because knowing them would anchor you to a past you are meant to outgrow. Release is not only letting go of things, it is letting go of the need to understand everything. God restores every unanswered question with peace, every disappointment with direction, and every closed door with redirection. What you release to Him is not being taken from you, it is being transformed for you. Think of the times in your life when you held something so tightly that it began to hurt you. A connection you poured yourself into until you felt empty. A plan you pushed so hard it drained your joy. A version of yourself you tried to maintain even though it no longer reflected who you were becoming. Holding on can sometimes feel like loyalty, but often it is fear in disguise. Fear of change, fear of loss, fear of uncertainty, fear of stepping into the unknown. But growth asks you to loosen your grip. Purpose requires space. Elevation requires release. God will never force something out of your hands, but He will keep nudging you until you recognize that what you are clinging to is too small for the destiny He has prepared. Releasing to God also means trusting that what is meant for you will not slip through your fingers. You do not need to cling desperately to what is aligned with your purpose. What is truly yours cannot be stolen. It cannot be lost. It cannot be destroyed. The blessing that fits your soul will return to you in a form that carries peace instead of chaos, growth instead of confusion, clarity instead of conflict. When you release something that was never meant to stay, it leaves. When you release something that was meant for you, it returns healed, matured, strengthened, and aligned. But either way, release leads to restoration. There are moments when God will remove something from your life to protect you, but there are also moments when He will ask you to release it yourself. The act of releasing is participation in your own healing. It is acknowledging that what lies in God's hands is safer than what lies in your own. Your hands can hold what already exists, but God's hands can shape what is yet to come. Your grip can preserve what you see, but His can build what you cannot imagine. Releasing is cooperation with destiny, agreement with transformation, alignment with divine movement. Sometimes God will let something fall apart not to punish you, but to stop you from building your life on a foundation that cannot support your purpose. When you release that foundation, God replaces it with something unshakable. Sometimes God will let you feel the weight of what you're holding to show you how deeply you need to let it go. When you release that weight, God restores your strength. Sometimes God allows a temporary emptiness to prepare you for a permanent elevation. When you release what fills the space, He restores it with something that fills your spirit instead of just your hands. Releasing to God is also deeply connected to identity. Many people cling to roles, labels, versions of themselves that fit their past but not their future. They hold on to guilt, shame, failure, comparisons, old narratives that were spoken over them. These things become internal luggage. But you cannot rise while carrying what keeps you grounded in wounds. God asks you to release these old identities, not to leave you empty, but to restore you with truth. Truth about your worth, truth about your strength, truth about your purpose. What you release from your identity, He restores with clarity and dignity. It takes maturity to release something without knowing what God will place in its place. It takes faith to step back without knowing how He will move forward. It takes courage to open your hands when life has taught you to hold everything tightly. But release is not only the beginning of restoration, it is the beginning of freedom. It loosens the chains you didn't know were holding you. It frees you from the weight you assumed you had to carry. It opens paths you did not know existed. God cannot bless closed fists, but open hands, hands that release, become the canvas on which He paints destiny. The moment you release something to God, heaven begins to reorganize your path. Things shift, people shift, opportunities shift. The atmosphere of your life rearranges itself to align with the purpose God is preparing. You may not see the movement immediately, but the release sets it in motion. What feels like letting go is actually letting in grace, letting in healing, letting in clarity, letting in growth, letting in blessings that were circling your life, waiting for space to enter. And the more you release, the more God restores. Not always in the same form, not always in the same shape, but always with purpose, always with intention, always with a depth you could not have imagined while you were still holding on. Releasing is the language of trust, and restoration is the language of God's response. Release is the opening, and restoration is the unfolding. Release is your surrender. Restoration is His promise. What you place in His hands returns with meaning, depth, alignment, and divine purpose. You are never unseen, forgotten, or alone. God is with you. There are moments in life when silence feels heavy, when prayers echo back without an answer, when the world moves forward while you stand still, wondering if anyone notices the weight you carry. In those quiet, hidden places of the heart, it becomes easy to believe that you have been overlooked, that your struggles do not matter, that your tears fall unseen. But the truth is deeper than emotion, stronger than circumstance, and older than time itself. You have never lived a moment outside God's sight. You have never breathed a breath outside His awareness. You have never carried a burden that He did not see resting on your shoulders. Even when you feel small or forgotten by people, you remain fully known, fully held, and fully loved by the one who crafted every detail of your existence. There are seasons when loneliness settles around you like a fog, blurring your confidence and dimming your hope. You may be surrounded by people, yet still feel unseen, unheard, misunderstood. Perhaps you carry pain you've never spoken aloud, memories you've never shared, fears you've never admitted. Even in those hidden chambers of your soul, God is present. He is the quiet witness to every silent struggle, every unseen disappointment, every moment you forced yourself to be strong when you wanted to break. God does not need you to speak your pain for Him to understand it. He knows the emotional storms before they rise. He feels the tremors in your spirit before they reach your expression. He sees the battles you fight when the world thinks you are calm. You are never unseen, not even in the places where you hide from yourself. There are experiences in life that make you question your worth. Betrayals that cut deeper than words, abandonments that leave shadows on the heart, losses that carve holes in your spirit. These wounds can convince you that you are unimportant, replaceable, or forgotten. But God's memory does not function like human memory. People forget because their attention shifts, their priorities change, their emotions fade. But God's attention is constant. His awareness is perfect. He does not misplace your worth or overlook your pain. You are engraved on His heart, held in His care, protected by His presence. Every detail of your life matters to Him. The days that break you, the days that shape you, and the days that rebuild you. He has never dismissed a single tear, nor ignored a single moment of your hurt. When life feels overwhelming, it is natural to wonder if God has stepped away, if His silence is a sign of distance, if His quietness means He is uninvolved. But silence is not absence. Stillness is not abandonment. Sometimes God's quiet presence is His greatest expression of closeness, guiding you gently without forcing His voice into your pain. When you cannot feel Him, He is still holding you. When you cannot hear Him, He is still guiding you. When you cannot see Him, He is still protecting you from what you cannot perceive. His presence is woven into the fabric of your every moment, whether you are aware of it or not. People might overlook you because they see only the surface of your life. They see your actions but not the intentions. They see your face but not your thoughts. They see your mistakes but not your growth. But God sees the complete mosaic of who you are, your strengths, your weaknesses, your potential, your wounds, your resilience, your tenderness, your courage. He sees the parts of you that no one else has ever witnessed. He understands the layers of your heart that even you struggle to comprehend. Nothing about you is hidden from Him, and nothing about you is too insignificant for His attention. You may walk through seasons where you feel like you are carrying your struggles alone, but God walks with you in every step. When your heart feels heavy, He is the quiet strength that keeps you moving. When your mind feels cluttered, He is the whisper of peace rising above the noise. When your hope feels dim, He is the spark that refuses to let it die. You may not always feel His presence, but His presence does not depend on your feelings. It is deeper, steadier, stronger than emotion. It is rooted in His promise, not your perception. There are moments when you give everything you have, your loyalty, your love, your effort, and receive so little in return. Moments when relationships fade, friendships crumble, and support disappears. In those times, it can feel like you are standing in the world alone. But God surrounds you with a presence that does not drift, does not weaken, does not diminish. He remains constant when everything else shifts. Even when everyone else steps back, God steps closer. Even when people forget who you were to them, God remembers who you are to Him. Sometimes God's presence is easiest to recognize in the aftermath of what you survived. When you look back and realize you made it through storms that should have broken you, through nights that felt endless, through pain that felt unbearable. You realize you were carried by a strength that was not your own, shielded by a grace that worked quietly in the background, guided by a love that refused to let you fall apart. What you thought was loneliness was actually protection. What you thought was abandonment was actually positioning. What you thought was silence was actually God preparing the next chapter of your story. You are never forgotten, not when life feels chaotic, not when you feel lost, not when you doubt yourself. God keeps track of every moment, even the ones that feel wasted. He uses every tear, every disappointment, every setback, every delay, every heartbreak. Nothing is overlooked. Nothing is dismissed. Nothing is forgotten. Your story is not lost in the crowd of humanity. God has not placed you on a shelf or set you aside. You remain central in His design, essential in His plan, precious in His eyes. And you are never alone. Not in your battles, not in your healing, not in your becoming. Even when people leave, God stays. Even when you push him away, he remains near. Even when you feel unworthy of love, he surrounds you with it. Loneliness may visit, but God does not leave. Doubt may whisper, but God does not step back. Fear may rise, but God stands firm. You walk with a presence that does not waver. You are never unseen, never forgotten, never alone, because God has taken residence in your story. His presence is the foundation beneath your weakness, the strength inside your courage, the light within your darkness. His watch over you is constant. His awareness of you is complete. His care for you is unending.